And the truth is, for many, many years, I never missed a single night of Horror Nights. Since 2006, I had this crazy streak going where I've been there every single night. It was up over 200 nights. And so it's hard for me to answer that question because there's a whole lot of the houses.
It's okay.
That I'd never seen, that I'd seen on videos on the internet and everything. But Chris and I went together a couple of years ago, 2016, and we grabbed a flight, we flew, we got there, we did like the whole park, two parks. We did Islands Adventure and Universal Orlando. We ran around, saw all the parks. Then we did all of Horror Nights, and we got on a plane the next morning at 7 a.m., flew back and did our event. But the one that really, really impressed me in Orlando was this one. It's called Ghost Town, the Curse of Lightning Gulch. And for me, what was so impressive about it was just the scale of the sets. They created this entire, ghost town environment, and it felt absolutely real. It was beautiful. It was inside a soundstage, and I loved all the gags. There was one particular gag where a guy popped out of a piano that I thought was really, really clever. I don't know, Chris, do you have a favorite from Orlando?
Mine was, I really like this too because we took a tour before the event itself and walked through, and we came around the corner, and I don't know if we weren't with Mike or with some of his guys, but I was...
When, we were talking about this, and Chris and Mike and I started talking about...
An actual two-story ghost town, much like what you're seeing in the Ghost Town, and they had great effects all the way through it, and scenically that was really the one I liked, but the Exorcist maze that they had produced was really, really cool. During, we did a pre-walk, but then we walked through it during the event, and they had some great effects. They had one effect that we're walking through the house, and literally the walls dropped in a scrim effect, and we were like out in the desert in Iraq. Very cool. And it was really big, too. It was really cool.
And one thing, too, I'm going to let you off a little easy, but every year I've worked on the event that I've known John. I think we've known each other now. Two of you have known you since like 2009 now. Talk to John, hey, come on out. And every year he's like, I got a streak, man. I got a streak.
Serious?
I'm not going to break my streak. I'm at the event every night, not breaking the streak. And you did it for me.
You know what broke the streak, actually?
What's that?
My niece decided to get married on an event night. And I was so pissed off. And I was like, you got to change that. And she's like, I can't. The invitations have already gone out. I'm like, I have a streak. So that's what broke the streak. So I'll get to Orlando more in the future. And Mike, your favorite Horror Nights house?
My favorite was actually the first maze I ever went to in Hollywood. House of 1,000 Corpses in 3D, zombie vision. So for me, we've done 3D mazes in the past in Orlando, but I gotta hand it to Chris and John and their teams. The 3D in this maze, I love this movie. My favorite part, some of my favorite parts visually are those interstitials that Rob Zombie did that kind of broke up the scenes, like real quick, kind of fever dream interstitials that were throughout that movie. And the 3D in this maze literally captured that, and I was blown away by it. And again, I really like this movie a lot. So being able to, again, that's the cool thing about, I've been to the Hollywood event a lot of times, and but here's the thing, that going through...
I live closer to you now.
I know you do, I know. Yeah, he's in Ireland now, so it is technically closer. But the really cool thing about, working with our teams in Orlando, and the one thing that we don't get is to be able to be surprised by the mazes. Take for granted when I'm able to come and visit. I get to finally be a walk through a Halloween Horror Nights maze that I know absolutely nothing about. So it's really cool.
My favorite premise, by the way, for an Orlando original maze, and I couldn't put it down because I didn't see it in person, was Nightingales. Did you?
Oh,
is
yes.
that yours?
That's why. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later.
But I just love the idea of the World War I thing. But I'll leave that. Yeah. We're going to talk about it a little bit later. All right, moving on. Let's get personal. Question: what is your biggest fear? This is from at Blogamust31.
Do you want me to go?
Yeah.
Going first.
Going first is your biggest fear?
Wow. So obviously, I'm a dad. So anything happening to my kids is like that's like the most horrible thing in the entire world. But being more playful with it, quite honestly, my biggest fear is deadlines. It's the one thing I'm like really afraid of. Are
What is it?
Deadlines.
Oh, deadlines.
Deadlines.
It's like dead lions.
Yeah, dead lions. I'm petrified of dead lions. They just lay there. Just to do something. Deadlines.
All right, Chris.
Heights. It is heights. Yeah.
Is that rooted in something from your childhood?
You know what?
This section's called "Let's
Yes.
Get Personal."
No, I know, but and maybe things that go bump in the night, maybe or something, that kind of a thing. Experience a few things type of thing. And
It's a tough question because we're always kind of around it. Everybody that's in this industry is always around the things that scare us the most. So we get a little bit, placid towards some of those things. I was never really afraid of like spiders or anything like that. I don't know about you, like nothing like that.
No, mine was heights actually, but not as a kid. I would climb the highest tree. But okay, believe it or not, when I was in college and like the second or third day.
Oh, I know
night,
this.
Oh yeah, he doesn't know this. The third night I was out in college, we drove to Westwood, me and some guys who I didn't even know, and they were like, "Hey, let's go to the Hollywood sign. You ever been there?" I was like, "Oh." So we did. We drove over to the Hollywood sign, and that one when it was accessible, and I climbed on the back of the H all the way to the top. And yeah, it was pretty scary then. No way would I ever do that now. There's just no way. But over time, I've just gotten really fearful of, heights.
That I didn't know.
I did. I climbed the top of the H. And I did it for bragging rights. So there you go.
Okay, now I'm gonna test everybody's knowledge of the Hollywood sign because do you know the Hollywood sign in the 70s was in disrepair and it was falling apart? Do you know who paid for the O? No. Thank you. Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper paid for the O as a tribute to Groucho Marx because he's really good friends with Groucho Marx. So there, obscure, useless trivia for you.
If nothing else, when you leave here after our 4-hour panel, you will have learned that.
All right. Oh, I have to go.
Yes.
I have really weird phobias. I'm afraid of wooden spoons and cotton balls. Seriously, seriously afraid of them. I can't even say it.
For real?
Yeah, no, this is real. I have a hard time even talking about it, so I don't like the texture. I can't touch cotton balls. I can't touch them. I can't handle them. I don't like them. They freak me out. Wooden spoons has a lot to do with like when you're a kid, you get those chocolate ice creams when you're a kid. Remember those?
Yeah.
They came with the wooden thing in it. I couldn't detect it. Don't like them.
So,
I'm serious. It really freaked me out.
In Orlando, we get to do a few original mazes in our slate, and I think I found one room theme that I'm going to force you to go through.
Performers have gotten wind of this. So sometimes when I'm going through an event, a character will come up to me and hand me a bunch of cotton balls. Worst. All right, moving on. Are you scared by your own creations from Hypnopilot V1? I suppose that means what we create. Do they scare you?
No. No.
Is the stream working okay, guys?
No.
Or is it look pixelated or anything like
would
that?
say
I don't know.
No, because
from my side.
overall we kind of know what's going to happen and what's going on, but I tell you, unless a performer moves into a different location where they're not supposed to be, I get startled a few times every year. Or I'll tell you, dot rooms. We did a Black Sabbath maze, and we did this dot room that was totally black, but then we just spattered green UV and try to get a nuclear field. So I'll be honest, when I walked in there and I'm looking for them, and they blend in so well that I'll scan the room and I'm looking. I know they're looking at me, and they're right here, and I can't tell that they're right here the whole time.
Sorry,
so
the internet
there's a
is
few times where I do
super
get
bad here,
startled. Yes.
Even on.
I think it's the same
My
thing.
network,
It's hard for your own haunted house or maze to scare you, but the performers, it's like they have a radar. They know when we're walking through. I'm sure you've experienced this, Mike. And they're just like, they just become obsessed with scaring you, and that's terrifying, honestly, because you don't want, the worst thing you could do is scream in front of your own performers. This is really embarrassing, but they have made me scream so many times over the years. And then, then backstage, you'd be walking backstage and they're like, I made you scream, And then you feel really small.
I lied.
What?
I misinterpreted the question. I thought it meant like the ideas that we have.
Did you think it meant
did you
your
mean like
children
the
scare you?
actual? Oh, my children terrify me. So we're talking about like when the event is happening, we're walking through. So yes, there was a moment, and that was An American Werewolf in London, the first time we did it in Orlando. That werewolf terrified me growing up when I watched that movie. And just like the Hollywood Park, we built full-size puppets based on Rick Baker's designs, and these were fully articulated. Again, in Orlando, they were actually manned by a puppeteer, so it could be whatever they wanted to do. It wasn't a fixed interaction with the guest. And we had created a kind of a darkened space to simulate going through the moors. And it was a right angle turn. It was the first wolf in the maze. And I had not seen it fired yet. I literally held back not seeing it in the actual space for the first time because I really wanted to get the reaction that an average person would. So walking around that corner and when that thing fired and seeing that in real life to scale was like, no. It was horrifying. And it was like the coolest thing ever. So I'm totally frightened and literally trying to just get against the wall, just going, let's get to the next thing, I want to see it again. It was cool.
But what the best thing is when you take a filmmaker or an actor through a maze that's based on the property that they were involved with, and you scare the hell out of them. That's like the best thing in the world, when you're taking somebody through and. I remember we did all those premiere parties for Walking Dead. We used to host all their premieres every time they had a premiere, and I would just go backstage and watch the monitors and watch all the different actors from Walking Dead go through, and I'd just be like, hey, his own character just scared him. All right, what do you love most about your job? What inspired you to choose your career path? I think those are actually two different questions, and this will help us get a little bit into how do we get to get into the business and kind of talk a little bit too about tips for people who want to get into business. But let's start with that first part. What do you love most about your job?
So the one thing about what I do at Universal Orlando, I oversee an amazing team of writers and show directors and designers and technicians. And Horror Nights is one element of their daily job. It's one element of my daily job, but I'm also responsible for all of the entertainment that exists within the entire resort. Seasonal events, all the parades we do, all the nighttime shows. If anybody saw the Christmas Hogwarts Castle projection display, I was responsible for the creative on that. So I get to dip my toe into a lot of different pools. And Horror Nights is the one kind of constant freight train that exists more than 365 now. I know that's the same for both of us. So that's the really cool thing is I've been able to evolve and really lead a lot of passionate people are doing things that I used to do in my formative years with the parks that now I kind of oversee. So it's been a really neat evolution that exists within Horror Nights, but also a lot of other content within the resort. So the diversity, the variety of things I'm able to collaborate with a lot of different. That's cool.
I really dig the creative freedom that really like John and I both have, and that we work together and dream all this kooky stuff up and come up with wacky ideas to think if, hey, can we make that work, or we see something in respect to a movie or a film, and then, see if we can, achieve a set or, a character or anything like that, pretty much, It's a really great thing is that we know we are going to actually physically produce 6 to 7 of these haunted mazes, houses, in a year. We know we're going to actually do that. Where, some creative institutions and other places, guys will develop stuff for years and it won't come to fruition. You know, one cool thing is that we know we have an end. We know where we're gonna end with it. So, which I think that's just really cool. Yeah.
I remember in an earlier part of my career when I was working for Universal Creative, in the beginning when I first started out, my ratio of things that I worked on to things that got produced, at one point was 48-1. You know, like you generate that much material that would never see the light of day and no one would ever see it, no one ever walk through it or write it or experience it. So I agree with what Chris said. You go in, you have this mountain of stuff you have to create, but you know at the end of the day, all you guys are going to get to go through it. And the kind of sad part of it is you know it's going to go away too. So you know it's only going to be there for a limited amount of time. So that initial creative process is one of my favorite things. And then the other thing is seeing performers bring it to life. That's the second most favorite part of the experience of creating Horror Nights, and always has been for me. I love Chris and I's initial time when we work and we do all that initial creative work and the back and forth that goes on in that. And then I love performers bring it to life because they always surprise you with things, you know, that maybe you didn't even think of that make it that much better.
I think the other thing too is being able to foster talent as well. Again, these are massive teams. We're just the guys up here talking to you guys. There are hundreds of people that are responsible for the creations that start on that white piece of paper, that then use the same amount of passion, the same amount of talent to be able to bring that to life. So it's really what I really love, and I know you guys can mirror this, is being able to really see something, finding those diamonds just like we were found, and instilling in that next what is going to be Halloween Horror Nights, you know.
And as far as what inspired you to choose your career path, you know, I've obviously talked about this before, so I won't go into great detail on this, but I mean, I'm a Southern California kid. I grew up going to Universal Studios Hollywood. You know, there was two seminal events in my life that set me on the path that I'm on now. One was my mom letting me see Frankenstein when I was 4 years old, and that forever, you know, made me obsessed with the Universal Classic Monsters. That's me in those really bad 60s pants looking at an equally really bad Wolfman. That's Universal, probably 1972. And you know, when I learned that you could come to Universal and you could actually meet the monsters, that was kind of it for me. So every time my parents would ask me where I wanted to go on my birthday, I always wanted to go to Universal. So both the movie studio and the theme park really inspired me to want to do this. And then, Chris.
You know, movies of the 80s, you know, all those practical effects and such, you know, big inspirations. They really were. My parents were as well, you know. My mom was an artist. She did a lot of oil paintings, and you know, that was a big inspiration watching her paint and such, and you know, a lot of that stuff translates even into scenic painting and such. But you know, it's really like the inspiration of, like, I was a big film guy. You know, I know John was too as well. You know.
I worked in a video store
Yes.
for like a long time, so
Yes.
that was like my film education. But for Mike.
Yeah, for me, E.T. was the first movie I ever saw in the theater with my mom. It was life-altering. You know, the idea, again, I was 82, so I was 4 years old. That was the first movie I ever saw that made me feel something, and knowing that it's just a flat image on that screen. I distinctly remember that. I even remember the song that played before the movie even started.
A whole different level.
Look it up on iTunes. It's snappy.
I don't have to look it up, I lived it.
And then Halloween was that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Terrified as a kid. I saw it way too young. But I distinctly remember watching the end of that movie, and it's brilliant because it still affects me the same way every single time I see it. Myers, you know, gets shot, falls off the second story, lands, and then later on in that ending, you just see his outline. And then the brilliant thing John Carpenter did was just cut to other homes, almost kind of searching for him. And I distinctly remember looking out the window of my room, going, "He's out there." How did they let him get away?
Again and again and again.
And I distinctly remember that, looking out that window and just being terrified because the neighborhood I saw on that screen looked eerily similar to the one that was right outside my window, and that was brilliant.
Cool. What training and schooling would it take to one day join your team of concept creators and your positions specifically?
Wow.
Okay, well, we'll see you later. Have that removed. And what course should we take within the company? This is from Kyle Harden at Yahoo. Thanks. Yahoo K. Thanks. Training, schooling.
Yeah, schooling is a big deal. It really is, because, hey, I'm looking for somebody, in a sense, if I'm, say, looking for an art director, somebody with experience, really. That's what I'm really looking for. So experience that they've already had experience in production in some way, entertainment production. And that all backs up into schooling. Schooling gets you your experience, and experience will get you to really where you need to be. But it's really the schooling part is more of a theatrical training in that respect.
And you're fine arts, right? You're a fine art.
Yeah, I had a different approach, actually. When I was in school, I didn't have like a theatrical training, but it was in fine art. So that was the direction I had, basically a starving artist. But, when I would think about that and think of the future, it's like, I don't want to paint on a bunch of canvases, and I surely don't want to starve either, So, in my wacky brain, I was really looking at different approaches in fine art. So what I would mostly create, honestly, were art installations or environments. So, I've talked about it before, which I've created, and more spiritual environments that actually those help me to get, smaller jobs that I get experience to be where I'm at today, actually.
How about you, Mike?
For me, I didn't go to college. It was all life experience. I really think, there are two types of people. Well, there's many, but there are two that I'll define here. There are those that really like the structure of being in school and that sort of classroom structure, and there are those that simply don't. Those that absorb materials differently, and I'm certainly in that category. For me, and the type of people that we look forward to join the creative team at Universal Orlando is someone that honestly has a passion for the thing that they really want to do. A lot of the show directors on my team, Charles Gray, Patrick Blaird, Blake Broswell, and they're led by an amazing woman named Laura Sauls. I've been with her for years and years and years, and she manages that crazy group from a day-to-day standpoint. And all of them have different backgrounds, and that's the one unique thing is there isn't one way that anybody gets to do this. I'll talk one thing about being here. Let me say once, what Rick and his team have done with this event, there's nothing like this on the East Coast at all. Nothing like this. It is an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. And you're seeing it out here, that the passion that goes into a lot of the people that are in the Hall of Shadows, doing their thing with the home haunts. And we met a girl named Aurora who did a home haunt.
Yeah. Did you guys get to go through that trick or treat?
Yeah, the fact that she just has a passion for it, and there are resources that are available to allow her to achieve the vision that she had, and that's really what it comes down to. It's what all of us have done is we had a goal in mind, that we saw way out there, and really no way to get there, but there is the first step. And you're seeing that happen all the time over these last 2 days in that hall, and all year when people are making these amazing haunts. It's passion, and that is the number one quality that you have to have in an individual that's on a team of other passionate people.
And I think, the Hall of Shadows is a great example of this. I meet so many people that, like, how do you get into the industry? What do I need to do? And how do I get your job, et cetera, et cetera. What's so beautiful about that is just do it. Just make something. Because everybody has to start somewhere. But if you just create something, it doesn't matter if it's a video on YouTube or a haunted house in your parents' garage, every little thing you do is a little bit of experience you get and be able to build upon to do the next. Dad, when I was starting out, gave me really good advice. And my father has worked for the Southern California Gas Company, which I think has a different name now, since 1960. worked for the same company his entire life, still works there, he's 82. And he told me when I was first starting out, whatever you do, whatever job you do it to the best of your ability, because quality rises to the surface, and that's how people get noticed. So if you're, the first job I think I ever had was waxing, like really scraping gum out. I was the best damn gum scraper that you ever saw, but that's, the passion is such a huge part of it. And it's also just the ability to never give up on yourself. And always, when you're pursuing your dream, everybody's path is going to take wacky turns. It's always a hard question to answer. I don't know what you guys think. Every time I'm asked that question, I always find it hard to answer. Like, what's the path to get there? There is no one path. Everything goes like this. I'm a theater major. I was specifically an acting major, But I ended up doing this because I took a summer job at Universal Studios in 1989 as a tour guide. That's me. And that's the picture of me talking, obviously, as a tour guide. The other picture in the polyester yellow Kodak outfit was I worked really hard as a tour guide. I got bumped up to be a summer supervisor, and then I just kept going. And then all of a sudden, somebody told me there was an opening in what was then called Universal Planning and Development for the ET ride, when we built the ET ride, as a production assistant. And the old special effects show, which was called The World of Cinemagic. So I just, went for it. And then every step led to something else. But it only did that because, if I was a gopher or a production assistant, I was the best damn gopher or production assistant you could imagine. And I've seen this with Horror Nights countless times, and I'm sure you guys have too. All these people who come to work for us, sometimes there's characters, and we have characters who are on our design team today. Troy's probably out in the hall somewhere. You'd recognize him because he's always wearing a fez. There he is. Troy, put your hand up. Troy was a character in our Thing maze, and he was the perfect Norwegian. He had that great beard, and then
Yes.
when we made him look all frozen, he looked awesome. He looked like he was from Norway.
He came here, and remember he studied Norwegian so he could speak it.
He did. He learned Norwegian.
A few lines.
In a maze where he didn't have any lines. We didn't even, I had to say, Troy, you don't have lines, but he still learned Norwegian. But Chris found out later that he had a whole design background.
Yeah, he came in, he approached me and talked to me, but his design background is, he went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo for the School of Architecture, which is like a 5-year program. Schooling
Serious.
and it's serious architecture. So he's gone through that, and he's done some serious studies. So a lot of the work that, honestly, most of the elevational stuff and the frontals that you see, Troy really helps us with that, figure that stuff out to make it look right and appropriate, because, we're not building 30-foot buildings, we're truncating them to make them look appropriate, So.
And then, since I had some free time on my flight, my 48 hours I traveled to be here today, I raided Mike's Facebook page to find out exactly where he came from. Look what I found. Would you like to explain this, Mr. Aiello?
Yeah, so I've been with Universal in Orlando 23 years. I started when I was 17 years old. And the picture there of me in that blue shirt, that's me as a skipper on the Jaws boat ride in Orlando.
I love that ride.
It was awesome. It was awesome. It was going to be a summer job. It was going to just be 3 months, and then I was going to, move on. And it became a 23-year career. So then I literally would change the script of the tour because I wanted to change it up. But I was
Did you take it to Jaws 3D, or how did you change it up?
No, I was more Jaws Revenge. Yeah.
They filmed that movie when I started at Universal.
Really?
Yeah, I was on the set.
My supervisor at the time brought me into the office and said, "Hey, I don't want to keep writing you up because you keep changing the script. There's an audition in entertainment. Why don't you go there? They're a little more free with the script." And I worked at a game show host for Nickelodeon Studios for a little while. Nickelodeon! So I worked there, met my wife there as well, almost 20 years ago now. And then I was also a blues brother. Everybody kept saying on the tours that, thanks, Mission from God. Everybody kept saying I look like Dan Aykroyd in my younger days. I don't know if I still do now. I don't know. You tell me. But I auditioned for that show and then got it. became contracted, sang and danced in a black suit in 110-degree weather, and played harmonica. And that was my in into entertainment, was being a performer first. And then it really kind of evolved from there.
And I think Mike really took to heart my dad's advice about, like, whatever you do, do it to the best of your ability, because look at that guy kill that shark. Damn.
I like how my gut is directly kind of wedged right in between. That's quite a shot you found, Mr. Murray. I'm sure. That looks great. That looks great.
So, Chris, how did you get to Universal?
Well, I honestly, February was my 20th year at Universal, actually. So I came in, well, here, let me back up a little bit. Out of college, I was very fortunate to get a design position with maybe another theme park in the area that does Halloween events, kind of a thing. But from there, I took that and pushed that into doing that at a couple of those parks for a few years. I'm not sure I gained some pretty darn good experience. And then in '97, I was working for a company, and we heard that Universal was doing Halloween again, because they had tried to boot it up a couple of times in like '85 and '92. This was in '97. I came with another company, and we got the contract to design 3 mazes, and if I remember right, it was like Crypt Keeper's Film Vault and Area 51, and I think we did another one, which was like a classic monster.
Yeah, I think I went through those, actually, yeah.
And so that was in '97 to 2001. Well, that was in '97. I got hired right after that season. I got hired out from Universal. So, I kind of came in as management. I came in, they created a position as an art director, honestly. They didn't have anything prior to that. Been very fortunate, in that respect, because honestly, that had happened, that was several times that happened at a couple of these parks, honestly. They see some value into something, and I kind of took advantage of it. So I've been there for like 20 years and just doing it, right?
But I think what's cool is that you can see, like, Chris came in already at a management level. Mike and I started as frontline employees and worked our way up. So there's all kinds of different roads and all kinds of different paths to getting where you want to get. But the important thing is your dream and always keeping your focus on that.
Thank you for switching the slide, by the way.
You're welcome. I knew you wanted me to do that. Okay, we're going to do one more of these questions, then we're going to start getting a little bit into talking about our process, and then we're going to share some stuff from 2018. What is the most troubling, disturbing, scariest scene you can think of that you both created? In other words, which scene has stuck with you the most and made you question your own sanity for even creating it?
Wow, they used all of the text in that Twitter.
For me, this is a behind-the-scenes picture from our home we were building it. And Chris and I wrote this scene, we put this scene together, and then, I didn't have kids at the time. I don't think I could do that scene today, honestly. It was where you're going over the river and you find La Llorona's dead children floating in the water. And what was even creepier about that is, I remember they were too big, and you had to cut them in half.
Yeah, we sectioned them so they're about that thin. So they would float, the water honestly was like 3 inches thick. It was very, very, very shallow. We had to colorize it so you wouldn't see the bottom of it. And I gotta be honest with you, I agree with John on that. This is like the creepiest thing that, that we did. At that time, John didn't have kids. At that time, I did, and they were young, so yeah, we had a lot of conversations about that. Not only the kids, this was kind of the first maze that we had some religious iconography in there as well. Yeah. And we debated a lot on that, if we should, show that, and we decided to as well. And also, if you know the lore of La Llorona, the eater of children, we showed that too.
She literally
ate them, really, intense, I think. We talked a lot about that and debated that. I think the big thing is on this is this is something that we created out of our own mind. We didn't look at a TV show and go, hey, we're gonna grab this scene and do it. It's not like from a film and pull something from that. It's something that we were thinking about and how to present it and how to show it and show it to you guys and make it scary and creepy. So I really think that that is the one that La Llorona really threw out.
I would agree. And then for Mike,
Yeah, to Chris's point, the being able to create something that is from your own brain and the team's collective consciousness and create that isn't replicating a movie scene or anything like that. In Orlando, we kind of divided our line between IPs and originals. So several years ago, we did a maze called Nightingale's Blood Prey. It was based, a story I wrote based around the Battle of Somme, which was the bloodiest battle of World War I. And I'm also a huge Doctor Who fan. So I wrote the story, yeah, female doctor! How about that? I can't wait. I wrote this backstory literally as a Doctor Who episode. Like, this would have been like my version of the Monster of the Week. And the Nightingale is a carrion monster that only appears in areas that there's a lot of death and mayhem because they're carrion. They don't kill, they only feed on the dead and dying. So placing this storyline within the bloodiest battle of World War I, this was pretty intense. We literally built a maze that was below ground level. The guests are walking through World War I trenches, and this chaos is happening all around them. The entrance to the maze was a trench that literally had a tank as the centerpiece. You actually walked underneath it. It was to scale. Massive facade for it. But this was a pretty intense maze. This is one of my favorite original mazes that we did in a while.
all right. Let's talk about living horror movies. We've done a lot of them. This is just a fraction of the movies and TV shows and other licensed properties that we've done over the years. What I thought would be cool, we'll do this, we'll run through this, we'll go pretty fast through this part, and then we're going to get into talking about some of the things we're doing this year. But I thought it would be interesting just to talk about the process, because I got this question, when considering IPs, what elements set a property apart as a good fit for a maze? Now, Chris and I have always had 3 rules, and sometimes we break them, but most of the time we try to stick with them. And it's pretty simple. One is awareness. And that simply means, do people know it? Do they want to see it? The reason I use this particular image, this is from, I think, Halloween Horror Nights 2007 or 2008.
7.
Notice something about this ad. Do you see the name Freddy anywhere? Do you see the name Jason anywhere? Do you see the name Leatherface anywhere? Do you see the words Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre? This, to me, is the greatest example of awareness. We could put out a poster that just has those 3 characters, and every single person knows exactly what that means. That's the ideal for a maze. If you could put an image out, and instantly people go, I know what that is, I want to see it. That's what we look for. Number 2, we look for characters that we can replicate in a live environment like a maze or a haunted house at Halloween Horror Nights. I use this particular image from Saw because a lot of times when you're working with movies, obviously Freddy's a great character to replicate because it's a mask. But somebody like the Reverse Bear Trap, if she didn't have that headgear on, I don't think that would work. You wouldn't know what it was. So we're always looking for things that have great characters that we can use our live actors to bring into life. And lastly, it's environments. Of course, this is from Alien vs. Predator. But we're always looking for great environments that we can replicate in a live attraction like Halloween Horror Nights. Is that any different for you guys, what you look for?
No. It's the 3-legged stool. You described it perfectly.
Question, what does it take to collab?
Exactly.
I'm going to use that term now. For both parks, how often do you have to meet to talk about the mazes?
Yeah, it's early in the process. It's literally from the IP standpoint.
Probably after this show, actually.
John, Chris, and I will sit down and just kind of spitball ideas on some brands that we haven't attempted before. If there are any white whales that are out there that we've always wanted to do that haven't really materialized yet. It's a really cool kind of first conversation that we'll have. That it's really preliminary at that point. Just trying to get our head wrapped around what does the event want to be in year 2 or year 3.
And it's funny because sometimes they line up. Like Chris and I will put a list. We usually put a list together, and then we'll talk to Mike and go, "Hey, here's what's on our list." And sometimes he's got things on his list that aren't on our list. And sometimes we go, "Oh yeah, I'd like to do that. Oh yeah." And like some years you'll see us line up with a lot of things in common, and some years less in common. And it's really just where we build those lists.
And that's at the beginning, you know. We have some every other week standing meetings that we call and talk to them. We talk and we go through actually, you know, like say for each meeting a trait. So one is costume design, and another one is makeup, and another one is technical, and then project management. So we do meet at least, you know, some standing meetings every other week as well.
It's also an effort to try and find some best practices as well between the two parks. If there are things that Chris and John and their teams are doing that are really efficient, we'll say, hey, let's adopt that sort of plan, and vice versa. But again, we've got two very different teams that the other great thing, you know, as John asked earlier, who's been to the Orlando event, one thing we consciously do with our content is make sure that we're creating two separate mazes, even if it is the same brand. We want to be able for someone, if they choose to visit the Hollywood Park and experience John and Chris's maze, that they're going to get a different experience on the East Coast with the Halloween Horror Nights team that's there. That's a conscious decision that we make.
And the next is a very common, we get this question all the time. I assume this, just because a movie does well at the theaters, doesn't mean it would always work out well as a maze. Have you ever had moments where fans wanted to see a movie recreated as a maze, but realized doing it might have terrible results?
Twilight.
You know, I was going to name my daughter. One of my daughters is Isabella. And originally I was going to name her Bella. And then I noticed that was the most popular name that year, and I was like, and I wanted to name her after Bela Lugosi, and which I did. But then I realized, oh my God, if I call her Bella, everybody's going to think she loves Twilight her whole life. So I changed her name over that movie. Go ahead. Do you have a movie, Mike?
Well, it's actually a recent one. It's come up a lot in conversations I've been having with people. A Quiet Place has come up a lot lately. Amazing movie.
You guys would have to be really quiet.
I know.
Can you do that? Can you not make a sound going through a maze?
And that, not to say it's not possible, but it's something you got to really think about in knowing the dynamics of the mazes that exist in Halloween Horror Nights. Quiet is definitely not one of them, and that is what makes that film so unique. In fact, when I first saw it, there was one other guy in the theater watching it, and it was hilarious because, and I knew he was consciously aware of it, but he would popcorn like this. In like the most inopportune time, and I'm just sitting. I'm like 3 rows ahead of him, just going, come on, man. So definitely a texture like that is something that is really hard to achieve in an attraction that has the throughput that a Horror Nights house or maze has to have.
Yeah, and I think when we were first starting out, people would say Blair Witch when it was just the first movie, and I'd be like, what? So you're gonna make a maze and there's gonna be one guy standing in a corner, you know? The first Paranormal Activity, you know, everybody was like, Paranormal Activity, I'm like, it's the door just goes, thank you, you know. And in recent years, Get Out, honestly, you know, I got a lot of people asking me about Get Out, and I'm like, Get Out's social commentary works brilliantly as a film. It's fantastic, it's genius, but it's not necessarily a maze, you know? Not everything is designed to be a maze, I think is the answer to that question. What's the process like creating an IP? How long does it take to get the rights to certain films? This is from Has a Michael G. The answer is a really, 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 really long time sometimes.
A crazy long time.
For 10 years, every year, Chris and I and Mike, and eventually when we started working with Mike, we would go, can we do The Exorcist? And the answer was always no. And then one year, the answer was yes, and that took 10 years. Shining took 11, 12 years, something like that from when we started. So sometimes it does take years and years and years to chase something to get it. What I thought we'd do really quickly, and I'll go fairly quick through this because we want to get to the content of what we're going to be talking about for this year, but just really quick, somebody asked me how we create a maze from start to finish. We're going to run it through it, and we're going to compare how we do it in Hollywood. We'll take the IP approach for Hollywood. Mike's going to take the original approach for Orlando, but obviously it starts with a concept. I just used Alice Cooper Goes to Hell because the particular concept for that maze is marrying that album together with Dante's Inferno, and that was kind of our leaping off point for that maze. And then Mike, you put,
Yeah, Dead Exposure, Patient Zero is a new original maze we're doing this year in Orlando. And again, the concept, it really actually happened at a bar with my buddy David Hughes, who's one of the designers. We did this maze, this is a prequel to a maze we did a couple years ago, that really the initial idea was, let's create an entirely black environment. Let's make it a zombie maze, but the way to make it different than any other zombie maze is we're just going to go back in with invisible UV and highlight every detail. So picture this room completely painted black, but we're going back in and highlighting all the detail of every object, every character, and then it's only black light that fires intermittently throughout the maze. So it creates like a negative image. So that was the concept.
so once you have the concept, you got to do the pitch. I included that picture of Chris and I, Chris and I backstage at Alice Cooper Concept. Literally when we pitched this idea, that's the only time we've ever captured the pitch in a photograph. We were backstage, Steve got invited us to see a show, we were backstage like, hey, so we just worked together, what about this? And then Mike, you put Mr. Landis up there.
Yeah, he has nothing to do with Dead Exposure. I didn't understand the process of the slide, sorry.
That's all right. But obviously, you know, when you're working with IPs, you have to go and you have to pitch the actual people that created the film or produced the film.
I just really like that picture of me and John Landis.
Good. Then you go through preliminary design. Chris and I would always work together. We called it the Post-it note version. We take Post-it notes for, you can see it up there, scenes, characters, effects, what the music was, and we would just play with them on the wall, moving them around until we had a basic flow.
Yeah, same thing. We do a lot of whiteboard descriptions, and then we even start doing some kind of really basic ink board ground plans, like D&D. It's D&D when you're growing up with graph paper. That's the exact process.
And then from there, I'll sit down and write a treatment. Usually that's about 100 pages on the left. And don't read this because it's from Trick or Treat. You're not supposed to know this. So don't read anything about the rock quarry scene, with the Halloween School Bus Massacre kids or any of that stuff. So that's an example of what our treatment looks like on the left. At the end of the day, they're pretty similar. We just have slightly different formats.
Different formats because our teams, coast to coast, just have different ways they like to take the information in. Again, Orlando's is a narrative with just briefest of visual references, and then a complete discipline breakdown grid that has all of the nuts and bolts of what the narrative is describing.
And at the end of the day, this document becomes the Bible of, like, everything needs to be in this document that's going to be in the maze, because that's what everybody's working off of. But then Chris would take it from here and he would do the drawing package.
So I'll take the treatment, and then whatever space that we're in, whether in a tent or in a queue, just really wherever we're located. And then I'll just start to rough it out in scale, usually like in 1/4 inch, and really trying to plug in all the elements and also other elements like tech rooms and performer rooms for like break rooms, as well as mask and makeup room and accesses throughout the maze itself, mechanical room. So, it honestly, when we're done with it, it does look like a wacky maze if you hold it and really kind of look at it. Maybe that's where the term kind of came from. But, essentially that's where I rough it out, and then I'll hand it to my art team, which is like head with Randy Creason, who's in charge of my show set team. We talked about Troy Zimmerman. He drew this plan, and what this is, and it has all the call-outs for The Shining, and what this is a representation of is our Grady twins.
Pepper's Ghost.
Thank you, our Pepper's Ghost gag. So.
And then on the other side, we will take those kind of like blue line basic sketches. We'll actually start going into a program called SketchUp. It's available to anybody. Anybody can download this program. It's really useful. So we'll actually create the mazes in 3-dimensional form so that we can actually walk through them and really get a sense of the angles, get a sense of the scares. We can do a lot of adjustments at this point in real time. This is a tool we've used for several years now, and it is invaluable in the UO process.
And then to get into elevations in the scenic package, so Chris on the left is Saw.
And that just has all the call outs, so that's essentially our raw elevation, for our basic typical building for right now. And then we take this and we give this to our technical team, so we could figure out the structure. Our structure behind a facade like this is basically what's called like a type 5, which is basically like building a house
or even more or beyond. If you ever dare to look up in one of our mazes, you might see some really, really heavy timber holding up something really lightweight. Well, we have to have engineers run calculations for us if we're hanging anything overhead. So, everything is engineered and such as well. It goes through a whole different route. So.
And then on the other side, this is actually a artist rendering of the facade for one of our new mazes, original mazes this year, called Carnival Graveyard. So our guests will walk through this. It is a graveyard salvage, and on either, the guest path is made up of discarded carnival rides and discarded carnival games. And inside are these amazing violent carnies. Murdy, if at any point you want to come and play a carny in the maze.
I am one.
I know. Now you can play one on TV. So yeah, this entire maze is all made up of kind of found object. It's in one of our sound stages and should be pretty cool.
I was going through a haunted house in Paris once. When Mike said carny, it just made me think of this, like a little bus bar ride, those little cheeky little rides. And it was terrible. But the very last scene, there was a guy inside it that threw a towel over your head and went like mussed your hair. And then you bust out the doors, and I was like, wow, Jesus, how many times did he put that towel on people? It like suddenly dawned on me. So I have a special fear of carnies because of this. So I'm looking forward to seeing this, Mike. Moving on. Then you go into that's the kid's bedroom from Titans of Terror?
Yeah, and what we're really just trying to show here is as much detail as we put in our elevations, and they're mostly all hand-drawn as well, because we're really trying to show, if you look at that elevation A, there's a couple cardboard stand-ups of Leatherface and Freddy, that kind of thing, showing to our prop team, what we're really trying to look for in the feeling of that room specific.
Yeah, and then this is another room facade within the Carnival Graveyard. We're going to take you into a now dilapidated tunnel of love as near the finale of the maze. So this is an artist rendering of that. But again, this tells a lot of detail, to Chris's point. This is so our scenic artists know exactly the color palettes and the type of textures that need to be used in every single wall of the maze.
And then, of course, you get into costume design. There's just a couple examples up there from The Purge, our Uncle Sam, and Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, that was Lucas Colshaw's
that's our
illustrator.
So we have he's right there. Hello, Lucas. We have a fabulous illustrator. His name's Lucas Colshaw. He's been with us for years and years. And so every time you see one of these images released through publicity, it's usually something that Lucas drew. So he draws up all the characters that we don't have film reference for. And then on the other side
this is an artist rendering of Chance. She's a Horror Nights icon. She was the kind of second to another character we created for Horror Nights called Jack the Clown. But a couple years ago, we gave her the event. She actually was the torchbearer for the event in our 26th year. She became the main icon for the event. So this is a rendering of her costume. Beautiful, beautiful rendering.
And then this just shows you what the final product looks like when it's all done. And then we get into makeup. A lot of times when you're working with intellectual properties, there's no need to draw it if you have great reference. This is from American Horror Story Roanoke, Pigman and the Butcher. Chris, you can probably explain what we're looking at.
We're looking at a couple sculptures on my left. I guess it's the pig head, and I think that's done out of water-based clay actually, and the other one I think is done out of oil-based. But these are through McGee effects, and the last several years we've had Mr. McGee do most of the lion's share of all the makeup and masks and such, and I'll tell you, his sculptures and the things that come out of his shop are just like no other. They really are awesome. Yep.
And there's the proof.
Yeah.
That's the pig man from American Horror Story last year.
And it's really hard to tell, but within around the snout, there's a lot of screens actually that he can see through, that the screen has hair on it. You can't tell, but that's how well hidden his vision is actually in this.
That's the final product for the Butcher.
Yeah. And, in that Butcher, real quick, sometimes, you talked about collaboration with Orlando. That's, the Butcher is shown there with a drop window.
we started doing drop windows last year, and that was really based on what John and I saw from Orlando and how we felt that we could implement those as well. So, you know, that's some collaboration that we do work with them on.
Okay.
This is a sculpt for the Killer Clowns from Outer Space Scare Zone that we'll be doing for our event this year. This is Rudy, and our team, it's all in-house. We have an amazing group of artists that are with us almost the entire year that create all of these amazing sculpts based on the references that will be given to be able to achieve the accurate look. I think the next one actually may have a finished product. There we go. There he is. So yeah, this is going to be a scare zone. It's going to be in our South Street portion of the park, and we're going to do most, if not all, of the Killer Clowns. So Fatso and Slim and Spike, Daisy, I think is going to be out there. You're going to see the ice cream truck, the Terenzi Brothers ice cream truck. This is one of those white whales for me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
It's probably worth mentioning too. Somebody had a very good question that I didn't include in this panel. But it's worth bringing up. They said, well, how come sometimes like Orlando does something first or Hollywood does something first? You know, is there a reason why you guys do that? And then specifically she was asking, well, American Werewolf in London, you guys did it first, and then we did it. I think Insidious, you know, Chris and I did it first, and then you guys did it. I think maybe we did Halloween first, 2009?
Yes, you did.
And then you guys did Halloween, and they did it again because they did it. Just because it's in Orlando or it's in Hollywood and it's not in one or the other doesn't mean it's not going to come to the event. A lot of times, Trick or Treat is a great example of this, and we'll talk about that in 1 second. You know, they did a fantastic scare zone for Trick or Treat, and then all of a sudden the next year, we're doing a maze. So you never know what you're going to see in the future. Lastly, just finish up on effects, you know, special effects design. This is Henrietta from Ash vs. Evil Dead. Basically one of our concept designs for special effects.
Yeah, and this is a little puppet thing that was working on with our effects team, and John and Lucas and Marissa Gallion, who heads our effects team up as well. And so this is just a concept of Henrietta with a puppet, and then we took this idea and then went to our warehouse, which we have a big warehouse, and then we did a little R&D with this to see how it worked, and through that we discovered that it was best for the puppeteer to be behind, actually, versus on the side of her, and then that's how we actually finished it out and had the puppeteer behind the wall with a mechanical mechanism that she could also turn her head to the right, and only to the right, because essentially that's where the flow went. It came at you and you went over to the right, so.
And that's the character being sculpted with Pat McGee's shop, and that's the final product.
And that's her turning her head
And scaring that girl.
to her right, yes. Yeah.
And then Mike?
Yeah, so when we decided to do Alien vs. Predator in Orlando, one thing we're trying to keep in mind at all times is how comfortable our characters are within the maze. And early on, we made a choice that we wanted all the aliens to be puppeteered, because we did not want a character to try and manage the size of the xenomorph head, knowing that it's very large and it could be uncomfortable. So all of our aliens in our maze were all completely puppeteered. We had 8 of these in the maze sprinkled kind of throughout the maze. But yeah, again, this was an exercise in how can we do a character differently that ensures that our performers are able to be comfortable.
And then, you know, just to finish up on the scenic production, I showed this slide earlier. This is from Alien vs. Predator, but I'm going to step through a series of slides that just show you the process to get to that. That's the finished product. So this is that same scene, right? This is right before.
Yeah. This is, we painted.
Or is this a suicide cult? I can't tell what's going on.
This is the scene. It's painted, it's aged, it's propped, it's ready to spray foam, actually. And, you know, you can see over their hands, I believe, and their heads, you know, we're trying to keep the foam off of them, and we'll come in. And I think the next page shows, yeah. We'll come with a big urethane foam rig. We're talking a big system that comes in, and we're trying to put like this secreted resin, you know, it's our intent of that, you know, within the alien predator world or the alien world, there's a lot of different ways that
in the films that they have portrayed this kind of a look to it, but you know, this is kind of our look as well, and we take a smaller foam pack and create some of the more smaller tendrils or tentacles on that as well. And then we really try to get, I know it's kind of odd, but you know, I grew up on a dairy ranch, so I kept explaining to my lead scenics, hey, I'm trying to get like this manure, a cow manure color, you know, and that is right there it, you know, and they nailed it. They finally got it. I didn't have to bring any reference in or anything like that. We figured it out, you know, on site and everything, but that's, you know, we're really trying to get a weird, nasty, sickly green color as well, brownish. Yep, and there's the finished piece.
And that's when it's all lit. And then Mike has an example from Dead Waters.
Yeah, Dead Waters. We did a almost 3-story tall riverboat that our guests walked through for the maze. It's one of our soundstage mazes. So there's a color elevation that kind of describes the look and feel. You can skip ahead. There was an in-progress version of the riverboat. And again, it was as if it was sinking into a bayou swamp. And then the final product kind of lit up. That was the facade. It was absolutely beautiful. It was named the Susan Moore. She was a costume designer that passed away during the production of this. So we named the boat after her.
All right. How long have you tried to have a trick-or-treat maze be in Halloween Horror Nights from Carlos' era? A long time. We met, this is Michael Doherty, by the way. This is the guy who wrote, created, directed, produced Trick or Treat. He also did Krampus. You guys remember Krampus? This is Michael in our Krampus maze. I think it was 2008.
Yes.
You and I went to lunch with Mike Doherty, and I think Trick or Treat had just come out, or was about to just come out, and it was supposed to be theatrically released, but at the end of the day, it came out straight to video, right? Yeah, it came. And Mike started talking to us that long ago, so 10 years ago. We had a long lunch, and then every so often we'd always stay in touch with Mike. And then eventually, when Universal Studios was doing Krampus, we hooked up and did his film. But the conversation about Trick or Treat with Mike